Welcome to Judicial Dollars and Cents, brought to you by Anders Virtual CFO Services team from all across the United States. I'm John Scott, and in each episode, we'll shine a light on the financial side of the legal world, turning law firm numbers into impact-driven stories. From taxes and profitability to practice growth and leadership, we sit down with law firm innovators who are shaping the future of the profession. Let's dive in, right here on Judicial Dollars and Cents. Hey, welcome back to Judicial Dollars and Cents, the podcast where we dive into the business side of running a law firm. I'm John Scott with Anders Virtual CFO Services for law firms, and each week we talk with industry experts who help law firm leaders think differently about growth, profitability, and performance so they can build practices that last. Today we will welcome Josh Palmintier. Did I say that right, Josh?
You did. Josh Palmintier. You got it.
So Josh is the founding partner of Palmintier, Thrower and Treuting Injury Attorneys, a Louisiana-based firm focused on catastrophic injury, wrongful death, traumatic brain injury, mass torts, class action, and product liability litigation. He's a graduate of Southern University Law Center, and he has spent more than 2 decades representing injured individuals and families throughout Louisiana. Growing up in a legal family and working alongside his father, veteran trial attorney Michael C. Palmintier, Josh developed an early appreciation for advocacy, justice, and the impact lawyers can have on clients' lives. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. It's good to be here.
Hey, Josh, as regular listeners know, I love to hear people's origin stories. So take me from how you got to not being an attorney to where you are today.
That's, a good question. And, the way it worked for me is that my father, who was, basically my idol and my hero growing up, he was a trial attorney. And we're talking about, someone who was in the trenches, trying cases every year, all year long. So, I got to spend some time there. And in my adolescence, I kind of got the itch for singing, and I was in some bands, and it was either go to law school or make it big in a band, and you can see what happened there. I can tell you this: for me, law school was a means to an end. I can tell you, John, the one thing that I have always that's always been a big deal to me is I can't abide bullies. I don't like them. Never have. I was a wrestler back in high school, and I was kind of small because I was cutting weight, and bullies would come and pick on me, and they'd get the bad end of that deal. And so I've kind of been that guy my entire life, and I made a living out of it through litigation.
I wrestled in high school as well for a couple of years just because the guys in my carpool were pretty good at it. And they all cut weight. I went up 3 weight classes during the season. They were cutting weight in rubber suits, and I was eating ice cream sandwiches. So, it works.
You must have been someone who was hated on that wrestling team.
I wasn't very good at it, but I enjoyed the wrestling. And it is an individual sport where you can really hurt someone with your hip bone and take a punishment out on them. Did you go straight from law school to working with your father's firm?
I did. I had ideas of doing it a different way. I had ideas of going and working for, the basically public defender over in Orleans Parish, as some of my colleagues have done. And, I was ready to do it. And my dad said, I've got more cases than I can say grace over. Either you're coming now or I'm going to have a different associate. So he basically called my bluff there. I went straight in and worked with him.
Well, good for him. And you got a lot of that training at the dinner table, I'm sure, as he practiced his craft on going to trial. And so it's kind of like Joe Buck getting trained by Jack Buck at the dinner table growing up to be an announcer. And then the other thing I heard you say is the singing career. I mean, that prepares you for being on stage and being in trial. My daughter is a litigator with Land O'Lincoln in Illinois, and she helps people with tenants' rights, renters.
Yes.
But she did improv for about a year because that really helped her think on her feet and, go to trial and react to what the judge or the opposing counsel was saying.
Yeah, John, the thing is, you should always be sharpening. You should always be sharpening your sword. And I can tell you, singing in bands, through college, and I actually still go do it occasionally. Granted, we're just doing covers these days, but it's still fun to get up on stage. I've always enjoyed it. I've done a little bit of acting. All of it is to continue to sharpen that sword, that litigation sword, because when you go in front of a jury, you got to feel pretty comfortable. I think that's one of the main things. You need to be confident and comfortable in order to truly represent your client properly.
So if one of our listeners or I was going to be in the Baton Rouge area, what hangout would you be singing at perhaps?
Oh, that's a good question, because we don't really have the best music scene in Baton Rouge, but it used to be the Rue House. We also we played at the casinos.
Yeah.
So Le Berge is one of them where we played, and Live at 5 is a venue downtown during the summer. And so we've historically had a couple gigs there as well. It's a fun thing to do on the side.
All right, so let's talk about your practice, and I'm particularly interested in how, if at all, you're using AI to help serve your clients.
Here's the thing about AI. If you're not using it, then you're going to go the way of the dodo. Now, mind you, we may end up having AI overlords in the next 10 years. Who knows? But right now, we have to use it because it is so efficient. It's quite amazing what you can do, and it's not just the law. Obviously, it's in every industry. But for the law, I can tell you, it is like having a couple of law clerks in the office. So it saves money. It's efficient, and absolutely, it's something that we use. We use it in our legal research. We use it in our brief writing. We use it kind of every step of the way. Now, mind you, it doesn't take away the what we call the first chair litigator. Okay, the person who's going to try that case, the person who's actually going to write that motion. AI for me helps with law office practice, and it helps with research and brief writing. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with me and my partners. And, I'm sure you've heard of hallucinations in the law. If you were to just use AI and there was a hallucination on, let's say, a brief, and the judge picked it up, you could have your license suspended. You most assuredly will be sanctioned. So, having to double and triple check everything that you run through AI is paramount. It's an absolute must.
Yeah, you're so right. And I'm glad you brought out the fact that we need that human oversight. But for those repeatable things, those mundane, repeatable tasks, we can create some efficiency there so that the human can then spend more time. Just the other day, I have Mizzou season tickets and I have Chiefs season tickets. And, I try to get everything on my calendar. So I asked ChatGPT to go out and pull the Mizzou football schedule and the Chiefs football schedule and put it into one schedule. If times were available, put the times on there as well. So from that document, I loaded everything into my calendar, and I went back to the Mizzou website and the Chiefs website, and it got the first 3/4 of the schedule correct, and it totally hallucinated the back half. So I went back to chat and I said, "Hey, you hallucinated from this date forward." And it apologized and said, "You're right. I should have checked the final schedules," and it came out with a better product. But it's not quite perfect yet, and you still need that human interaction and oversight, but we're getting there.
Yes, we're getting there. And John, a couple things. First, think about that. We're talking about a professional schedule here. Kansas
Right.
City Chiefs. I mean, how difficult is that? And it's still hallucinated, right?
Right.
So you really have to be cautious. Now, the other thing is, look, if you ever have some season tickets to the Kansas City Chiefs, please think about me and my wife and I. My wife loves Taylor Swift, and I love the Chiefs. So there you
Well,
go.
Tay Tay is right up in the box usually you can you can see a blonde silhouette from where I sit sometimes. And you can tell when she's there because everyone in all the sections are craning their heads up there to see if she's in the window. So I want to talk about types of law that you do and how do you forecast in a contingent environment. So in your firm, you're doing contingent work. The cash flow, the cases that are in the flywheel can ebb and flow. How do you, if you do, can forecast your cash position 13 weeks out, 6 weeks out, the year?
Well, it's funny. We are in the process of doing that as we speak. We've been doing it for the past year. When I came into my firm, obviously, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and my father's been doing it for over 50 years. So there really wasn't much of since there was no AI, and since and the contingency fee law practice was very different back then. You know, we basically ate what we killed, and we had plenty of cases, and we didn't really have to think very much about the business side of things. However, these days, as I'm sure with the big box firms, the huge Morgan and Morgans of the world, they've taken basically they get to cherry pick everything at the ground level. And so we have to really kind of put our business hat on quite often. What we do is, and you're exactly right, in terms of contingency fee work, there are peaks and troughs. There's no question about it. So what we're doing right now is we're putting in place KPIs, key performance indicators, for everyone from our intake specialists all the way up to attorneys. And we're hoping that'll help out. We are forecasting every year in December the following year, quarter by quarter. And so we're hoping that helps. But John, what we do, because what we do is we do basically all personal injury. So you're talking about wrongful death survival actions, brain injuries, all the things that you listed out when you were going over my bio, motor vehicle accidents, all the way to premises liability. We also do class action work. And so, which is a completely different animal, right? And you might have a quarter where, you see $100,000 come in, and then the next quarter might be 3 million. So you just have to, kind of plan accordingly. And you have to be kind of vigilant about knowing your cases, knowing your case inventory, and forecasting out.
I'm glad you mentioned case inventory because PI firms have real value. They're saleable to other attorneys. And if you have a good case management system, you can set up reports that basically value that inventory. And then there are different milestones based on the type of cases. And MVAs have a different life cycle than certainly your class action and your med mal cases. And you can assign those milestones. And once you set this spreadsheet up, this report, if the attorneys look at it once a month and update the milestones, it becomes infinitely easier to predict that cash. And then we try and advise firms that based on their risk profile, they need 10 to 30% of expected revenue as cash on hand. Now, that doesn't all have to be in your operating account, and it certainly doesn't count your trust account, but it could be a line of credit availability so that you can cover 2 to 3 months worth of payroll and other operating expenses on a regular basis. And with your cash flow that is a roller coaster, you're going to skew more towards that 30% because you have higher risk than an hourly billing firm that sends out bills monthly and they're paid by return mail. But
there's no question about that.
But so I'm glad you're looking at data and paying attention to that because I think that's really key. Too many firms don't have the delayed gratification of leaving enough cash there, and they see there's 500,000 in the operating account. We're going to make a distribution to the owners. Well, hang on, we got payroll due next week, and that's 150, and the rent's due. So you can't just take out every dollar that's in there. But once you hit your cash target, you can take the next incremental dollar that's in that account. So once you get to that target, then all things get better. What case management system do you use?
Right now, we use Smokeball,
Okay.
and we do enjoy smokeball. We think that it is really served its purpose. But we may move to another case management software system here in the next year. And it's funny, John, you were talking about the saleability of law firms. I don't know if there's ever been a better time for that for the owners of firms like myself than right now. And that is something that my partners and I have really thought of. So we're trying to build up basically our procedures and protocols to where if someone came knocking and it was the right amount, that we could sell. And of course, that doesn't mean we stop doing what we love, because I love what I do. I love litigating. I love getting out in front of a jury and telling someone's story, especially when they're catastrophically injured. And all of my clients are deserving, but most of those smaller cases, they tend to settle. So I love it. I love storytelling.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Morgan and Morgan, because John Morgan had an ad the other day that basically said a lot of firms in a cash crunch are pushing the client to settle because they have cash needs. And he mentioned that it was usury in nature, it was mafia-like. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. An attorney is going to do their best job for their client, regardless of their situation. I'm sure there's a few bad actors out there.
Sure.
But he is really just preying on the masses and saying, well, you got to come to us because we have all the money and we don't need to settle your case. I thought the ad was ridiculous, but I really enjoy Morgan and Morgan flooding the airways with ads, because I think it makes everyone step up their game and do better. Competition is good.
Well, I can tell you that, you know what I'd love? I'd love to see the percentage of cases that Morgan and Morgan settles, and the percentage of as compared to the percentage that they actually take to trial. It's funny that they may say that, and they may have a ton of money. They're the largest firm in the world, as we know, right? But that doesn't mean that they bring all their cases to trial. I promise you that.
Yeah, I think if we looked under the hood, you're right. Their percentage of settlement is probably quite large.
Yeah, I can tell you that, what I've learned through the last, 22, 23 years is that even though my father and his partners, one who is now a federal court judge in the Middle District in Baton Rouge, was appointed 8 or 9 years ago. They believed that the legal profession was only a profession. And that may have been true at one point, but that sure as heck isn't true now, John.
Yeah, so the aversion to advertising has gone away.
I
How
mean,
do you all go to market?
Go the way of the dodo, John,
The dodo bird. How do you all go to market?
So right now we have a great SEO service called Matador. Basically, it's a boy genius. He's still in his 20s, and he's been amazing. He's brought us from, it's a very, very competitive market where we are, and he's brought us from being 40, 30 in the 30s and 40s on searches, on certain keyword searches, to being top 3 in almost every one. So that's one way. Giving back to the community in different ways that makes you feel good, and it gets your name out there. So we do a bit of that. And in terms of the advertising, we're still working on what's going to be the best. We want to make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze. And so what we're doing is I think right now we're planning on in 2027 to go to do a total digital campaign. But we may do a little bit of billboards here and there in 2027, 2028. But I don't know if that's the best bang for your buck if you were a boutique shop of litigators. You know what I mean?
I think you ought to name the band after the firm and take it on the road, but that's just me. So let's hit the class action. You also do mass torts, is that right?
We do, yes.
Okay, so those are big upfront investments on the firm side. I mean, there's a lot of costs that you're fronting for quite a long time. How do you handle that? Are you just leaving money behind, or do you use financing for that?
Well, we use financing, but also what we recognize is that when you are part of a class action and even certain mass torts, it's always good to have a team of a team of firms. Okay, and like we were at a large position in BP, the BP litigation, and we were on the plaintiff steering committee, and that's an example. They have these steering committees, right? That are made up of different firms and different attorneys, and look, I think that there's a lot of ego in the law, and I try to be egoless. So I try to put the best teams that I can together to benefit the client the most. They're different skill sets, and so I look for those that have skill sets that differ from myself and my partners, and we put together a team. And then we all put money in together, and that's usually how those larger cases work.
So the BP litigation relates to the Gulf of Mexico oil spill,
Correct.
which was how many years ago?
Well, 2010, I believe it was. I believe that was the actual spill,
Okay, so
uh,
16
and
years
and it
ago.
was in
So
litigation
from
for
the
some years.
spill, so from the spill to someone getting compensation, has any money been paid out yet?
Oh yeah, I would say all the money has been paid out at this point. It's
Okay, but how
look,
many
that was
years was it from how many years was it from spill to first payout?
probably about 6 years.
That's an incredible amount of time for somebody who was harmed to survive.
Oh my, absolutely. Look, I just had a case. It was the city of Walker litigation that had to do with a project that was done on Interstate 12 in Baton Rouge, East Baton Rouge Parish, and Livingston Parish. I was lead counsel on that class action, and that was against private companies who had faulty design and construction of what was called the Go Wider project. What ended up happening is there was a flood. They had built up the highway about a foot and a half from its original from its original topography, and then they put in a 4.5 to 6 foot wall with little or no drainage, and on one side the water was all the way up to the top, the other side was almost bone dry.
Wow.
So yeah, and I mean these it took 6 7 years before a penny was seen. So this class action litigation, it's not for the weak of heart. You need to be in for the long haul in that type of litigation.
Understood. Hey, uh, I like to ask people kind of off the wall questions, and you being from Baton Rouge, I want to go down the Kiffin train in LSU football. Can you make a prediction as to their win loss record? Will they be in the CFP? And how long? The last part of my question is, how long does Lane last in Baton Rouge?
Lane, I think first let's start with the first question. And look, I bleed purple and gold. I bleed purple and gold. Have season tickets, so you're asking the right person. I would
Okay,
I would start with I would start with this, John. We're gonna win the whole thing next year. Look, as I said, I bleed purple
undefeated.
and gold. Undefeated. Now, I think that we probably have 2 or 3 losses next year, and I think we probably make it to the CFP. In this day of college football, it's basically professional. We had the number one, not the number one recruiting class, but the number one transfer portal class. Added over 40 new players. And
Wow.
we're talking about top of the heap, cream of the crop players to blue chippers. So it's just a matter of whether he can get them all to play together in a cohesive fashion early on. Because we've got a really difficult schedule. We play Texas A&M early. We play Clemson early. I think they had an off year last year, but they'll be pretty good this year. But I think that Lane Kiffin, I've got high hopes. I think Lane Kiffin stays in Baton Rouge as long as he wants to stay in Baton Rouge. Really, I think he's
Well,
a damn good coach.
I hope you're right.
Yeah, I think he's a damn good coach,
I
and I
hope
and I,
you're
and I
right.
really believe that he is going to be maybe we'll put up a statue of him at the end of his reign at LSU.
He is entertaining, to say the least, and you've hired Ogeron back, and he's super entertaining. So I wish you well.
No, thank you so much, John, and it's been a pleasure.
Well, hey, before we wrap up, what's the best way to folks can get a hold of you or your firm?
The best way to get in touch with us is to go to www.plgroupla.com. That is our website. You can see our reviews. You can see the type of litigation that we perform and that we practice in, and of course you can contact us there through email. You can contact us there through phone. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and all other social media outlets.
Well, Josh, this has been a wonderful conversation. I want to thank you for being a guest today, and thank all of you for tuning in to Judicial Dollars and Cents. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us grow and ensures that you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time on Judicial Dollars and Cents. Thanks for joining us on Judicial Dollars and Cents, presented by Anders Virtual CFO Services. If you found value in today's conversation, be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcast. To learn more about how Anders helps law firms strengthen their financial foundations and drive growth, visit anderscpa.com. Until next time, keep making smart decisions that make perfect sense.